when colors turned to ash. The street artist's dream. The morning sun painted gold across the cobblestones of Lumina's old quarter. Elena Vasquez knelt on the cold pavement, her fingers moving swiftly across the concrete canvas. Around her, a crowd had gathered, watching in silent wonder as she brought life to the gray street beneath her hands. She was creating a phoenix, not the traditional bird of fire and glory, but something more personal. This phoenix wore the face of every person who had ever felt broken, its wings made of shattered dreams carefully pieced back together. The colors she used were not bright and hopeful, but deep and real, midnight blues, blood reds, and the purple of fresh bruises slowly healing. "Beautiful," a voice said above her. Elena didn't look up. She had learned long ago that compliments from strangers rarely meant anything. They would watch, they would praise, and then they would walk away, leaving her to wash her art off the street when the city workers came with their hoses at dusk. "I mean it," the voice continued. "This is the most honest piece of art I've seen in years." This time, Elena paused. There was something different in the tone, not the casual appreciation of a tourist, but the considered judgment of someone who actually understood. She looked up, shielding her eyes from the sun, and found herself staring at a man who seemed to have stepped out of a fashion magazine. He was tall, with dark hair swept back from a face that was almost too handsome. His suit probably cost more than Elena made in 6 months. A silver watch caught the light on his wrist, and his shoes were so perfectly polished she could see her reflection in them. "Marcus Blackwell," he said, extending a hand. "I own the Blackwell Gallery on 5th Avenue. The offer she couldn't refuse." Elena's heart jumped. Everyone in Lumina knew the Blackwell Gallery. It was where careers were made, where unknown artists became overnight sensations. Getting a show at Blackwell's was like winning the lottery. It just didn't happen to people like her. "Elena Vasquez," she replied, taking his hand. His grip was firm, confident, the handshake of someone who had never been told no. "I've been watching you for weeks," Marcus said, and Elena felt a small shiver run down her spine. "Every morning you're here, creating something new, and every evening the city washes it away. Don't you ever want something more permanent? Something that lasts?" "Of course I do," Elena said, standing up and wiping chalk dust from her worn jeans. "But galleries don't exactly line up to show the work of street artists. We're not refined enough." Marcus smiled, and it was a smile that could melt steel. "That's where they're wrong. The art world is dying because it's become too safe, too predictable. What you do, this raw, honest emotion, that's what people are hungry for. They just don't know it yet." He pulled a business card from his pocket, holding it out to her. The card was thick, expensive paper, with gold lettering that seemed to glow in the sunlight. "Come to my gallery tomorrow at 2 o'clock. I want to talk to you about a show." "Your show, Elena." A chance to stop painting on sidewalks and start painting history. Elena took the card with trembling fingers. Her mind was racing, 1,000 questions fighting to get out, but all she could manage was, "Why me?" Marcus looked back down at her phoenix, at the broken, beautiful faces that made up its wings. "Because you paint the truth," he said softly. "And truth, Ms. Vasquez, is the rarest commodity in the art world. The Gallery of Dreams." The Blackwell Gallery was everything Elena had imagined and more. Situated in the heart of Lumina's upscale district, it was a temple of white marble and crystal glass. The art hanging on the walls represented millions of dollars, decades of human creativity captured and contained behind velvet ropes and silent alarm systems. Elena had worn her best dress, a simple black number that she'd bought at a thrift store and carefully mended. Next to the other visitors in their designer clothes and glittering jewelry, she felt like a sparrow in a room full of peacocks. But when Marcus saw her, his face lit up as if she were the only person in the room. "Elena," he said, crossing the gallery floor with quick strides. "You came. I wasn't sure you would." "Why wouldn't I?" she asked, confused. "Because you strike me as someone who doesn't trust easily," Marcus said. "Someone who's been disappointed before." He wasn't wrong. Elena had spent her entire life being invisible, overlooked, dismissed. Her art had been her only voice in a world that didn't want to listen. Marcus led her through the gallery, past millions of dollars worth of art, to a private office in the back. The room was intimate, masculine, with leather furniture and walls lined with books. A massive window overlooked the city, giving a view that made Elena feel like she was flying. "Sit," Marcus said, gesturing to one of the leather chairs. He poured 2 glasses of wine from a crystal decanter, handing one to Elena. "Let's talk about your future." The romance blooms. Over the next 3 months, Elena's life transformed into a fairy tale. Marcus didn't just offer her a show. He became her mentor, her champion, her guide into a world she had only dreamed about. He took her to art openings where she rubbed shoulders with collectors and critics. He introduced her to other artists, famous names she had only read about. He hired a professional photographer to document her process, a publicist to craft her story, a framer to preserve her work. But more than that, Marcus made Elena feel seen. For the first time in her life, someone looked at her and saw not a struggling artist, not a poor girl from the wrong side of the city, but someone brilliant, someone worthy, someone special. The romance happened naturally, like water finding its level. It started with long conversations over coffee, discussing art and philosophy until the cafes closed around them. It evolved into dinners at expensive restaurants where Marcus would order in rapid French and make Elena laugh with stories about the eccentric artists he'd represented over the years. One rainy evening, as they stood under an awning watching the storm, Marcus had kissed her. It was soft, tentative, asking a question rather than making a demand. Elena had answered by pulling him closer, and in that moment, she felt like every hard year of her life had been worth it to arrive at this point. "I love you," Marcus whispered against her lips. "I love you too," Elena replied, and she meant it with every fiber of her being. The Masterpiece Collection. For her show at the Blackwell Gallery, Elena created the most ambitious work of her career. It was a collection she called Visible Voices, 20 large-scale paintings that told the stories of invisible people. Homeless veterans, single mothers, immigrant workers, elderly people forgotten by their families. Each painting was a portrait, but not just of a face. Elena painted their souls, their dreams, their unspoken hopes rendered in colors that seemed to pulse with life. She worked day and night in the studio space Marcus had provided, a converted warehouse with floor-to-ceiling windows that flooded the room with natural light. Marcus would visit her every evening, bringing food and encouragement, sitting in comfortable silence as she painted. "This is going to change everything," he told her one night, standing before the nearly completed collection. "You're going to be famous, Elena. Critics from New York, Paris, Tokyo, they're all coming to your opening. You're going to have the career you've always deserved." Elena looked at her paintings, at the faces she had poured her heart into, and felt a surge of pride unlike anything she'd ever experienced. "I couldn't have done this without you," she said, turning to Marcus. "You believed in me when no one else did." Marcus wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "I saw your talent, that's all. The work has always been yours." The opening was scheduled for Friday night, 3 days away. Elena could barely sleep, her mind racing with excitement and nerves. This was it, her big moment, her chance to finally step into the light. The night everything shattered. The night before the opening, Elena couldn't shake a strange feeling of unease. She had finished the last painting that afternoon, and Marcus had insisted on celebrating with champagne. But something in his smile had seemed off, a flicker of something she couldn't quite name. Unable to sleep, she decided to walk to the gallery. She told herself she just wanted to see her work one more time, to make sure every painting was perfectly hung. But deep down, she knew she was looking for reassurance, for proof that the fairy tale was real. The gallery was dark when she arrived, but she saw light coming from Marcus's office. Relief flooded through her. He was working late too, probably preparing for tomorrow's big event. She would surprise him, maybe they could walk home together through the quiet city streets. Elena used her key to enter through the back door. As she walked through the darkened gallery, past her own paintings hanging in the shadows, she heard voices coming from Marcus's office. The door was slightly ajar, and she recognized Marcus's voice, followed by another man's laugh. "You've really outdone yourself this time, Blackwell," the stranger said. "Where did you find this girl?" "Street artist," Marcus replied, and there was something in his tone that made Elena freeze. "Been painting on sidewalks for years. Decent technical skill, but completely naive about the business side of things." "And she has no idea?" Marcus laughed, and the sound was like ice water in Elena's veins. "None. She thinks tomorrow is her big debut. She's so grateful, so in love, she'd sign anything I put in front of her." Elena's hand trembled as she pushed the door open wider, just enough to see into the office. Marcus was sitting at his desk, across from a short, balding man in an expensive suit. Between them lay a contract. "The beauty of it," Marcus continued, "is that by the time she realizes what she's signed, it'll be too late. The collection is legally mine. I'll sell the paintings for millions and she'll get her little percentage, just enough to keep her grateful and compliant. Maybe I'll even throw her another show in a few years if she's good." "What about the girl herself?" the balding man asked. Marcus shrugged. "She's in love with me. She'll do whatever I say. And if she doesn't," he smiled coldly, "well, contracts are contracts. Her reputation is entirely dependent on my gallery, my connections, my word. Cross me, and she'll be back on the streets where I found her." Who would believe a nobody artist over Marcus Blackwell? The world tilted beneath Elena's feet. The fairy tale shattered like crystal, revealing the nightmare beneath. Every kind word, every kiss, every promise. All of it had been a lie. She wasn't Marcus's partner or his love. She was his mark, his product, his ticket to millions of dollars. The confrontation. Elena didn't remember walking into the office. One moment she was frozen in the doorway. The next she was standing in front of Marcus's desk, her voice shaking with rage and heartbreak. "Is it true?" she demanded. "All of it." Marcus's face went pale, then hardened. The balding man quickly gathered his papers and fled, leaving them alone. For a long moment, Marcus just looked at her, and she saw him calculating, deciding whether to lie or tell the truth. He chose truth, but there was no kindness in it. "You were never going to make it on your own, Elena," he said, leaning back in his chair with a casualness that broke her heart all over again. "Street artists don't become gallery artists. They don't get written about in the Times or collected by museums. You needed me. I needed someone who actually cared about me." Elena shouted. "Not someone who saw me as a product to exploit." "Don't be naive," Marcus said coldly. "This is how the art world works. Do you think Picasso's dealers loved him? Do you think Warhol's agents were his friends? Business is business. I made you an offer, you accepted it, and now you're going to honor our contract." "I'm not signing anything," Elena said, backing toward the door. Marcus stood up, and there was a threat in his movement. "Then you'll have nothing. I'll make sure of it. I'll tell every gallery, every critic, every collector that you're unstable, that you tried to steal from me, that you're a fraud. Your art will never see the inside of a gallery again. Those paintings are mine." Elena cried. "I created them. And I discovered you," Marcus countered. "I gave you the space, the materials, the platform. Without me, you're nothing but a girl with chalk on her hands, painting pictures that wash away in the rain." He moved around the desk, coming closer. "Sign the contract, Elena. Take your small percentage and be grateful. Or walk away with nothing and watch me become rich off your work anyway. Those are your only two choices." Elena looked at the man she had loved, the man she had trusted with her dreams, and saw a stranger. Worse than a stranger, a predator. "I won't let you do this," she whispered. "You can't stop me," Marcus said with a pitying smile. "Go home, Elena. Sleep on it. Tomorrow's still your big night. You should enjoy it while you can." The fall. Elena ran. She ran through the empty streets of Lumina until her lungs burned and her legs gave out. She collapsed on a bench in the park where she used to paint and finally let herself cry. She thought about going to the police, but she had no proof. She thought about calling a lawyer, but she had no money. She thought about showing up at the opening tomorrow and telling everyone the truth, but she knew what would happen. Marcus would make her look like a jealous, unstable woman scorned. His reputation against hers. His word against hers. She had no power, no platform, no voice, just like she'd always been. By the time the sun rose, Elena had made a decision. She wouldn't sign Marcus's contract. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction. But she also wouldn't fight him, not yet. She was too broken, too poor, too powerless. She would disappear. Let Marcus have his show, his profits, his lies. Let him think he had won. But deep in her heart, where a love had lived just hours before, something cold and hard was forming. Promise. A vow. One day she would make him pay. She didn't know how and she didn't know when, but she would find a way. Marcus Blackwell had taught her an important lesson. In the art world, the real masterpiece isn't what you paint on canvas. It's what you're willing to do to survive. Elena Vasquez walked away from the gallery district as the city woke around her. She walked away from her paintings, her big opening, her fairy tale life. She walked into the shadows, where the broken went to either die or be reborn. And she chose to be reborn. The revenge would come later. First, she had to become someone Marcus could never see coming. She had to transform herself into a work of art so perfect, so beautiful, so deadly, that when she finally struck, he wouldn't know what hit him. The phoenix on the street had been just a painting. Now, Elena would become the real thing, rising from the ashes of her destroyed dreams, wings made of rage and purpose, ready to burn the man who had tried to own her. The story was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. The artist reborn. 6 months in darkness. 6 months after the night her world shattered. Elena Vasquez was unrecognizable. Not in appearance. She still had the same dark eyes, the same slender hands that had once created beauty on sidewalks. But inside, where her innocent dreams had once lived, there was now something harder, sharper, more dangerous. She worked 3 jobs to survive. During the day, she cleaned offices in the financial district, scrubbing toilets and emptying trash cans for executives who never looked at her face. In the evenings, she waitressed at a cheap diner where the coffee was bitter and the customers rarely tipped. And late at night, when the city finally slept, she painted. But she no longer painted on streets. That Elena, the hopeful girl who believed beauty could change the world, was dead. This new Elena painted in the basement of a condemned building she'd broken into, using stolen supplies and working by the light of a camping lantern. Her new work was different, darker. Where once she had painted hope and resilience, now she painted rage. Her canvases screamed with betrayal, burned with revenge, bled with the truth of what powerful men did to naive women who trusted them. She had followed Marcus's opening from afar, reading the glowing reviews online at the public library. Blackwell discovers brilliant new talent. The headlines read, Marcus Blackwell's eye for art strikes again. Her paintings, her heart, her soul, her pain, had sold for millions. And Marcus had taken it all, just as he'd promised. The reviews mentioned her only once, in passing. The artist, Elena Vasquez, shows promise under Blackwell's guidance. As if she were a child he was raising, a pet he was training. As if her genius was somehow his gift to her. Elena had wanted to scream, to rage, to break things. Instead, she had worked. Every spare moment, every ounce of energy went into 2 things. Surviving and planning. Because rage without strategy was just noise. And Elena was done making noise that could be washed away by morning. The woman in the shadows. It was during one of her late-night painting sessions that Isabella found her. Elena had been so absorbed in her work, a massive piece depicting a phoenix strangling a snake, that she hadn't heard the basement door creak open. "You're very talented," a voice said from the darkness, and Elena spun around, her heart hammering, a paintbrush clutched like a weapon. An elderly woman stood at the bottom of the stairs. She was small and elegant, with silver hair pulled back in a neat bun and eyes that seemed to see everything. Despite the late hour and the sketchy location, she wore a beautiful silk scarf and carried herself like royalty. "Who are you?" Elena demanded, positioning herself between the stranger and her paintings. "How did you find me?" "I'm Isabella Moretti," the woman said, and Elena's breath caught. Everyone in the art world knew that name. Isabella Moretti had been the most feared and respected art critic in the country for 40 years. She had made and broken careers with a single review. 5 years ago, she had retired, disappearing from public life. "What do you want?" Elena asked, not lowering her guard. Isabella walked closer, studying the paintings that covered the basement walls. Her face was unreadable, but her eyes were sharp, missing nothing. "I've been looking for you for 3 months," Isabella said finally. "Ever since the Blackwell exhibition. I saw your work there, the Visible Voices collection. It was brilliant, raw, honest, powerful. The kind of art that changes people." Elena felt the old wound tear open. "Those paintings don't belong to me anymore. Marcus Blackwell owns them." "Marcus Blackwell is a thief and a liar," Isabella said bluntly. "I've known it for years, but I could never prove it. He's careful, clever. He finds desperate artists, exploits them, steals their work or their credit, and moves on. You're not the first, Elena, but you could be the last." "What do you mean?" Elena asked, her heart beginning to race with something that felt dangerously like hope. Isabella turned to face her fully. "I mean, child, that if you want revenge, real revenge, the kind that destroys him permanently, I can teach you how to get it. But it will require patience, intelligence, and perfect execution. The question is, are you willing to do what it takes? The education of a warrior." For the next 4 months, Elena received an education money couldn't buy. Isabella became her teacher, her mentor, her general in a war Elena hadn't known how to fight. Isabella's apartment was a museum of art history. Every wall was covered with paintings, photographs, sketches. But more valuable than the art were the files Isabella had kept over her 40-year career, detailed records of every major transaction, every scandal, every dirty secret in the art world. "Knowledge is power," Isabella taught her. "Marcus thrives because artists don't understand business. They think their talent is enough. But in this world, talent is just the entry fee. To win, you need to understand money, contracts, psychology, and leverage." Elena learned how galleries really worked, how art was valued, how reputations were built and destroyed. She learned about provenance and authentication, about the collectors who drove the market and the critics who influenced them. She learned that the art world, despite its pretensions of culture and beauty, was just another business. And like all businesses, it ran on greed, ego, and fear. But Isabella taught her more than just business. She taught her strategy. Revenge isn't about destroying your enemy in a moment of passion, Isabella explained one evening over tea. That's just violence, and it's easily dismissed or punished. True revenge is about making your enemy destroy himself. You give him enough rope, guide him gently toward the cliff, and let his own greed push him over the edge. "How do I do that with Marcus?" Elena asked. Isabella smiled. A cold, sharp smile that reminded Elena that this kind woman was also a legendary predator in her own right. "We create something he cannot resist. We make you into the artist he wishes he had discovered, and we dangle you in front of him like bait. His greed will do the rest." "But he knows me," Elena protested. "He'll recognize me." "Will he?" Isabella asked. "Marcus looks at people and sees only what they can do for him. He never really saw you, Elena. He saw a naive girl he could exploit. If we change the packaging, change the context, change your confidence and bearing, he'll see only what we want him to see." The greatest artistic discovery of his life. And so Elena's transformation began. Becoming Noctis. The name came to Elena in a dream. Noctis, Latin for night. It was perfect. The artist Elena Vasquez had worked in daylight, painting hope and color on bright sidewalks. Noctis would work in darkness, creating art that spoke of shadows, secrets, and the hidden truths people were afraid to face. But becoming Noctis required more than just a new name. It required becoming a completely different person. Isabella hired a stylist who transformed Elena's appearance. Her long, practical hair was cut into a sharp, asymmetrical style and dyed a deep black with a single silver streak. Her wardrobe changed from thrift store basics to minimalist designer pieces. All black, all sharp lines, all conveying power and mystery. She learned to walk differently, to speak differently, to command a room with silence rather than words. Confidence is a performance, Isabella taught her. Marcus is confident because he's never been truly challenged. You will be confident because you've survived the worst and emerged stronger. That's the difference between his confidence and yours. His is a mask. Yours is armor. But the most important transformation was in Elena's art itself. Working with Isabella's guidance, she developed a completely new style. Where Elena Vasquez had painted realistic portraits of real people, Noctis created abstract nightmares. Swirling, disturbing pieces that seemed to move in the darkness, that made viewers uncomfortable in ways they couldn't quite articulate. The technique was unique. Elena painted exclusively in the dark, using only touch and memory, then added light-reactive paint that revealed hidden images when viewed under different wavelengths. A painting that looked like beautiful chaos in normal light became something darker, more disturbing, more truthful under UV light. The meaning was deliberate. Things that seem one way in the light reveal their true nature in darkness. Just like Marcus, just like the art world itself. The underground movement. Isabella's connections ran deep. Through her network of former colleagues, disillusioned artists, and underground curators, she helped Elena launch Noctis into the art world, but not through traditional channels. They started with guerrilla exhibitions. Elena would rent abandoned buildings for a single night, spread the word through whispers and encrypted messages, and create immersive installations that existed for only a few hours before disappearing forever. Collectors and critics had to work to find Noctis's shows, had to earn the right to see the art. The scarcity, the mystery, the raw power of the work created a buzz. People started talking. Who was Noctis? Where had this artist come from? Why did their work feel so personal, so angry, so true? Art bloggers wrote speculation pieces. Underground art magazines featured blurry photos of the installations. Collectors who had seen the work whispered about it in the galleries and auction houses, creating a hunger that grew with each mysterious appearance and disappearance. Elena watched it all from the shadows, learning, growing, preparing. She was becoming someone Marcus wouldn't recognize. Someone powerful, mysterious, desirable. She was becoming the perfect bait. 3 months into the Noctis project, Isabella showed Elena something that made her blood run hot and cold at once. It was a gossip column from an art industry newsletter. The Blackwell Gallery, once the hottest destination in Lumina's art scene, has reportedly been struggling to find fresh talent. Sources say Marcus Blackwell hasn't made a significant discovery in over a year, and several of his represented artists have quietly moved to rival galleries. Perhaps the golden boy's touch is finally fading. He's vulnerable, Isabella said. His ego is wounded. He's desperate to prove he still has it, that he can still discover the next big thing. This is the perfect time. Elena stared at the article, thinking about the man who had destroyed her. For so long, he had seemed untouchable, all-powerful. Seeing him struggle, seeing him fail, it should have felt satisfying. Instead, it just made her more determined. How do we hook him? Elena asked. Isabella pulled out a folder. Inside was a single photograph of one of Noctis's recent pieces, a haunting installation that had appeared in an abandoned church for one night only. The image had been carefully selected. Dramatic, mysterious, undeniably brilliant. We send him this, Isabella said. Anonymously. Just a photo, no explanation, no contact information. We let him obsess. We let him search. And when he's desperate enough, when he's convinced himself that Noctis is his salvation, we let him find us. Elena held the photograph, remembering the night she'd created that piece. She had painted her rage, her betrayal, her determination onto those church walls, working until her hands bled and her vision blurred. The installation had lasted 6 hours before the building's owner had discovered it and painted over everything. But those 6 hours had been enough. They had been captured, documented, whispered about. They had made Noctis real. "Do it," Elena said. "Send it to him." The moment of contact. Marcus received the photograph on a Tuesday morning. Elena knew because Isabella had a contact in Marcus's gallery. A gallery assistant who had her own reasons to hate him and who was more than willing to spy for Isabella. According to the assistant, Marcus had stared at the photograph for 20 minutes without moving. Then he'd called an emergency meeting with his staff, demanding to know everything about Noctis. Who was this artist? How could they be found? Why hadn't anyone brought this to his attention sooner? For 3 weeks, Marcus became obsessed. He attended underground shows, cultivated connections in the street art scene, hired private investigators. He was chasing a ghost, and the more he chased, the more Noctis's value grew. Finally, Isabella decided it was time. She arranged for Marcus to receive an invitation to a private Noctis exhibition. A small, exclusive event in a converted warehouse on the edge of the city. Only 50 invitations were sent out, all to carefully selected art world insiders. Marcus's invitation came through a contact who owed Isabella a favor, passed along as if it were the most valuable commodity in the world. The night of the exhibition, Elena prepared herself with the precision of a soldier going into battle. She dressed in all black, elegant, expensive, untouchable. Her makeup was dramatic, transforming her face into a work of art itself. She looked in the mirror and didn't see the girl who had painted on sidewalks. She saw Noctis. She saw power. She saw revenge. Isabella squeezed her hand before she left for the warehouse. "Remember," the old woman said, "tonight is just the beginning. Don't let emotion drive you. Stay cold, stay smart, stay in character. You're not Elena anymore. You're Noctis, and Noctis is untouchable." "I know," Elena said, and she meant it. The girl who had loved Marcus Blackwell was dead. The woman who would destroy him was just being born. The gallery of ghosts. The warehouse had been transformed into a maze of darkness and light. Elena's new collection, 15 pieces in total, was displayed throughout the space. Each painting appeared different depending on how it was lit, revealing layer upon layer of hidden meanings. The central piece, the one she knew would hook Marcus completely, was called The Collector. In normal light, it showed a beautiful man in an expensive suit, surrounded by art. But under UV light, the painting transformed. The man's face became skeletal, predatory, and the art around him wept blood. The figures in the paintings he collected reached out toward the viewer, their silent mouths screaming for help. It was Marcus. It was every Marcus. It was the art world's darkest truth made visible. Elena stood in a darkened corner, watching as collectors and critics moved through the space. Their reactions ranged from fascination to discomfort to awe. This was her most powerful work yet. Not because it was pretty, but because it was true. At exactly 9 o'clock, Marcus Blackwell arrived. Elena watched him enter the warehouse, and she felt her heart begin to race. This was the first time she'd seen him in 9 months. He looked older, more stressed. The lines around his eyes had deepened, and there was a tightness to his jaw that hadn't been there before. Good, Elena thought. Let him hurt. Let him know what it feels like to struggle. Marcus moved through the exhibition with the focus of a predator on a hunt. He studied each piece carefully, and Elena could see the hunger growing in his eyes. This was what he needed: edgy, mysterious, undeniably brilliant. This was the discovery that would restore his reputation. When he reached The Collector, he stopped, stared. Elena saw the moment of recognition flicker across his face. Not of her, but of himself in the painting.